Welcome back to the Awareness Angle interviews. In this episode, I talked to Jasmine from the Zensory. This is a great conversation about mindfulness and about the impact that stress can have on the actions that we take. We could talk about the science, the biology that happens deep in our brain, about our own personal source code and kernels. We also get into a bit of mindfulness at the end of the episode. It's really, really good. I came out of this conversation feeling quite enlightened and it gave me a fresh perspective. So have a listen to me talking to Jasmine from the Zensory. Hope you enjoy it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Awareness Angle interviews. I am joined today by Jasmine Eskenzi. And Jasmine, why have I asked you here to talk to me today?
Great question, Ant. Well, I'm asking you the same question, to be honest. Why have you asked me? I'd love to know. We actually met each other in the giddy heights of Birmingham very recently.
Yes.
And that was at the National Cybersecurity Show, where the Zensory was presenting quite a novel concept in cybersecurity, which is the concept of mindful security, using your mindset as your key defense tool in cybersecurity. And again, Ant and I have spoken about this. We're both super passionate about mental health. And, today we're excited to talk about how this is so important, really, from a security perspective and why we have to prioritize this. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Amazing. Hit the nail on the head right there. It's interesting because I went to the National Cybersecurity Show and I hadn't been before. And I go to these events hoping to see something new, something different, a fresh approach. And for a long time, there hasn't really been much new that I've seen. Nothing that's gone, and your stand, your little corner you had there stood out to me for a couple of reasons. Number one, the whole kind of play on words and the different approach was amazing, like the Zensory. I love the name and the play there, but also the visuals you used were really eye-catching, simple, and it wasn't your typical blue security affair. So that really stood out to me. So, what is the Zensory? What is the tool, the product?
Yeah, so the Zensory is ultimately a platform. We have it on mobile and web.
Yep.
And we're using mindfulness technology to shift the state of the brain, body, and emotions from a state of stress and dysregulation to clarity, performance, and regulation. And what that can do is that can actually completely enhance cybersecurity posture by making you mindful, careful, and secure because you're in a state of calm and they're not in a state of kind of reaction. So that's everything that we do. And we've spent years researching exactly this topic with a board of scientific advisors and experts to create, educational content and the platform. So that's it.
I feel like mindfulness isn't something new because lots of people have spoken it. There's apps, there's advertising campaigns you see all over. What is new and what is fresh is associating this with cybersecurity. And you've got some science that obviously links the two. Like, why are you bringing those together?
Yeah, it's a great question. There was a statistic by Tessian, actually. I think it was roughly 2 years ago. And that massively brought a big kind of red flag to our awareness. And that was the fact that 47% of social engineering attacks happen when people are stressed, overwhelmed, or distracted. So already that was a big aha moment of, wait, half of the time people are simply in that state of stress, they're multitasking, so that was wait, no one is looking at this space.
No.
And so that was a kind of key driver. Not only that, but the Zensory as a company started off looking at mindfulness. My background was in health tech. My co-founders were in cybersecurity. So again, we were all looking at burnout and we were seeing it across all generations. So we're kind of burnout is a massive issue.
Yeah.
That was our key driver, was impact first. How can we give people tools that are accessible and easy and neuro-inclusive, to help with burnout, because we're seeing it everywhere. It's outrageous. Like, it's all over. It's all over the place. We're seeing it in schools. We're seeing it all generations, leadership from, entry level. So that was where it started. But then in cyber, there was this fascinating correlation of, wait a minute, it's not just well-being that's affected. It's performance, it's absenteeism, it's presenteeism. But then there's this hidden bit, this missing puzzle piece of online safety. How is our mindset affecting online safety? And, how aware we are of what we're interacting with online. So that was a key driver. And we were like, wow, there's a huge correlation. And then we've been, launching tons of live case studies and research, and constantly in industry, spoken to tons of CISOs and done roundtables and done pilots and case studies all around this topic of how can you correlate mindfulness with online safety.
I've seen this with phishing campaigns, for example. They pull emotional triggers, don't they? So they're designed to create a sense of urgency. And I gather that's what the Zensory tooling equips someone to identify and then gives them the skill set to, deal with that, and actually the mindset to go, actually, no, I'm going to take a breath here and maybe go to the app. Is that the kind of trigger that you're looking for?
That's exactly it. So I think what we noticed, there was an amazing professor, he's our chief scientific officer, an amazing guy called Dr. Paras Patel, and his PhD was looking at, well-being technology and how we can use tech for good ultimately. And one thing that really upset me when we were speaking to him is he was saying so many people in this country, in the UK, don't even recognize when they're stressed. They don't even know. If I said to you, like the random person off the street, do you know when you're stressed? They wouldn't know. It's sweaty, clammy hands, dizziness, tightness in the chest. That first step is almost a big barrier to overcome. How do we give people the ability to be interoceptive, to understand, oh, I'm stressed, I need to be aware. So that's where the education comes in. These are some symptoms. Let's do some check-ins over the first few weeks. What is it that's presenting in your body? So you can know, actually, that does look dodgy. And I'm aware of that now and how that feels. So that's the first step. And then you're right. Once you teach people things like how they can use their senses to ground themselves, how you can take, a big long exhale to get you to feel calmer, how you can use soundscapes, binaural beats, all these amazing biohacks that can regulate you quickly. Suddenly, you can change someone's life, because my dream really is that beyond just the Zensory teaching you the initial tools and giving it, almost like panic buttons in the moment, I want people to know these things, and for the rest of their life, they've got it in their back pocket. They know how to do the breathing. They know how to kind of be mindful and get into nature and regulate themselves. And we've got younger generations that are educated and empowered to be able to do that. They're not thinking like, oh my God, I'm feeling panicky, but they're so disassociated, they don't know how to implement the tools to feel regulated again.
It's funny, isn't it? Because when we teach children things like the Green Cross Code, stop, look, and listen. When you get to a road, don't step out, look. But we're not equipping them with the mental skills to identify, like, when you feel stressed, here's what you do. Was it in the conversation we had at the show? There was like a three-word phrase that you said. Was that? I remember seeing something, and it was like stop, breathe, or something like that. It is almost like people need to identify and then realize it's okay to not respond immediately. Either stand up or take a break or just take a breath. And like you say, one big inhale and exhale could really make a difference, change perceptions. Yeah.
Another nice, I know, because I know you were saying before as well, it'd be nice to share with everyone listening some tips, like quick tips. 3 deep breaths is a great one. It's so simple. And anytime you're like, oh God, I feel a bit, overwhelmed or whatever it could be, just taking those 3 deep breaths is really powerful. And, when you take a big gasp, like a gasp like that, you're actually getting into that the sympathetic nervous system response. So that's your fight or flight. The more you're taking a big inhale, because when you would feel shocked, your body does that naturally to kind of energize you.
Right.
But actually, when you sigh, like when you relax, like a big long exhale, you're going into a parasympathetic response. So that's rest and digest. So if you're taking 3 deep breaths and you're taking a longer, deeper exhale than an inhale, you're actually going to trick your nervous system into thinking it's calm, even if you're feeling stressed. So that is a great hack. And the other one that I love teaching people is It's like a fingerprint technique. So you bring your two fingers together in a circular motion, and you just try and bring your attention to the ridges in your fingerprints. So you have to really focus and see
wow.
if you can feel the ridges in your fingerprints. And you can do that on the train, under a desk, in a meeting, but it's going to really quickly just bring you into the present moment using touch as your mindfulness anchor.
I really like that. That's it's because it's so subtle as well. Like, it's not like you can't sit in a meeting room full of like 15 people and take a sharp breath and then exhale slowly, because everyone will be like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? But that is so subtle. You can almost do that at any point of stress. And I can feel the ridges on my fingers. That's yeah. Wow. Thank
And
you.
it's kind of weird when you feel them, you're like, whoa, I didn't even realize.
Yeah. That's amazing. Do you think we're so busy, people in the awareness space, which, is a lot of people that listen to this are security awareness professionals. They're so busy saying, don't click on this, and, report this, and careful what you click on. And we've started to talk. It used to be you spot a phishing email because it will have spelling errors, or you look for the address it came from. And I think there has been a shift over the past few years as those things are becoming rarer and rarer now. Like, it's rare you get a harmful phishing email that has spelling mistakes, because AI now means anybody in any language can write an efficient phishing email. So now we do tend to talk about more how it makes you feel. And indeed, I remember with where I used to work, I said to my SOC, look, you guys aren't experts in kind of the human side of it. You're very technical. But if you get an email that makes you think, or or ooh, then that's what I want to know. So it's almost like we've moved on to telling people, how does it make you feel? Is it making you feel panicked? Does it make you feel scared? Or is there an urgency? Do you think we should be playing more on stress and headspace in our messaging, rather than just like spot for spelling mistakes and who it's from? Do you think the feeling of it all it's an important indicator into whether or not it's genuine or not? Do you think that's important?
100%. I think not only is it important to make people feel like they're human beings and they're not just another bit of vulnerability in a company, we've dehumanized people by rolling out campaigns to say, any language that I'm seeing in cybersecurity, and I have seen in the past decade and beyond, has been, you're the issue, don't click on things, blame game. An incident happens, the CISO and the SOC and the cyber team is to blame, and they're straight away, they're in the firing line.
Yeah.
And then also the individual that's actually kind of, again, let that threat into the organization, they're blamed. And there is a massive fear culture. So I think the primary reason it's important to also look at the human side, and I don't mean just human risk, I'm looking at humanizing human risk, is looking at, okay, what about the individual that's there? And I think adding that human element back in helps people feel valued. It helps people feel valued, not just another cog in a machine, which from so many companies and people I speak to, that's happening more and more. And I'm telling you, looking at the way that we're starting to see things being automated at a level that, is unprecedented. In like now, we had the Industrial Revolution. Now we're having almost like an intellectual replacement of so much. We don't even know. Look at how things have started to, skyrocket. So again, people are scared. They're scared for their jobs. They want to feel human. They want to feel valued. And the other thing is, when you look at the key jobs and roles for 2030, there are things like empathy is at the core, compassion is at the core, emotional intelligence, creativity, problem solving. All of these things are at the center. And I think as technologists, as innovators, we can't be an industry in cybersecurity to just fall into the box of black and white, tech everything. It's like, no. We have to actually be very much more human-centered, but really properly human-centered.
I find this quite interesting because 8-9 years ago, in security awareness, it was phishing. Phishing were all the platforms. Everyone, you go to a trade show, everyone was a phishing company. And then about 6-7 years ago, people started talking about behaviors and about human risk. And the words human risk started being bandied around. And generally, like, you look at the SANS like annual report, and its security awareness is still very much seen as the phrase. human risk, some people like it, some people don't. Some people think it's wider than our space. But human behaviors all of a sudden became the next pivot about 7 years ago, and everyone was talking about it. Not many companies do it well. Lots of companies tap into existing data sources and then try and build a profile out of that. I think the one thing that's been evident, or that's become evident, is you can't buy an off-the-shelf platform that solves the human problem. And I don't say I say the human problem. That sounds awful. I don't mean humans are problems, but you know what I mean. Like the vulnerabilities caused by the human just being organic and everyone being individual. You can't buy an off-the-shelf solution for that. You imagine every single computer ran its own operating system. You couldn't buy an antivirus for that or an EDR for that, because every single computer would run its own operating system. And that's essentially what people do. Every single individual is running their own version of Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever. There's just billions of different varieties. This solution, what you're talking, kind of gets down to the proper common denominator. This is like the kernel that all of the operating systems are based on. And this is why I think this is quite an interesting space. I mean, many security incidents involve people making rushed and emotional decisions. What's going on in our brains when we're making that call, when we're making that judgment? What is every single operating system doing at that point?
Yeah, great question. Also, I just love how you phrase that. I love how you phrase that, and I love that you get it. And I think that's why we kind of connected, because we both are so excited about this, and we can see how important it is. And I hope those of you listening do as well.
Yeah, this is like it really. I've looked at many human risk platforms. We went to market. We looked at 10 vendors recommended by Gartner, kind of 12, 24 months ago. And there's lots of good platforms out there, but none of them is like the magic cure. There is no magic cure for this problem, because it goes deeper than just looking at actions. And there's a few solutions out there that try and stop it before it happens. And they're novel and unique, and they have their place. But fundamentally, it is all like, it's right at the root. And this is where this kind of taps in, isn't it? Because we're teaching people to understand that real kind of basic primal. And this is like, this is like down to the primal, this whole, like, what goes on in here, that fight or flight, that's primal instinct, isn't it? Back from when we were cave people, and, do I fight this lion or do I run away? So what's going on in our heads when we're faced with these kind of rushed judgments, or we're under pressure, or we're stressed and panicked?
So again, it's a great question, because this was, when I understood this, it honestly changed my life. I saw a graph of two segments of the brain. It was kind of like the brain cut in half. And on one side, you could see the brain under stress, and the other side, you could see the brain calm. And when the brain is under stress, something called an amygdala hijack happens. So your amygdala is responsible for fight or flight. And it's brilliant. It is brilliant, and it can kind of help us when we're in dangerous situations. However, when that part of your brain is active, it can start to shut down your prefrontal cortex at the front of your brain. So if you can imagine the brain under stress, your amygdala at the back is really kind of like expanded. It's bright red, I'm trying to visualize this graph for you. And you can kind of also see the prefrontal cortex is not functioning at its best. So if you can imagine, it's just not as active. And what that does is that means that you're acting out of fear, you're acting on emotions, you're struggling with decisions, and you're making, brash decisions. You can't recall information. Your memory's kind of not quite at full performance. So again, when you're in that state, guess what? That is an ideal state for you to be attacked and to be vulnerable. And so that's really the key thing. But then when you look at the brain when it's calm, your amygdala goes back to a normal size. It's the activity is regulated, and your prefrontal cortex, the brilliant, clear thinking part of your mind for critical thinking, focus, managing your emotions, recognizing triggers, that can work again. It can actually start to work. So again, if you can imagine that stress versus calm brain, ultimately you can't think straight when you're stressed. When you're calm, you can think straight, you can recognize triggers, and you can think clearly. So that in a nutshell is what's happening in our brain. Stress is literally making our our clear thinking part of our brain like shut down when we're in high stress.
Wow.
Um,
So it like almost throttles it. It's like you're not. It doesn't allow it to be fed, and that's that really is quite eye opening when you put it like that. It kind of makes it much clearer, doesn't it? Wow. Have you seen examples of where moments of calm or clarity could have helped someone avoid a risky situation?
Yeah. With examples, there's a few, but I can't obviously, for reasons of people sharing what's happened, breaches in their company, I can't actually share names. But there's a few stories that people have opened up with. And some people have had, decades of experience in the industry. And I always find those are good case studies because these people are super aware themselves. And, I know multiple people that when they're, stressed, distracted, getting out of a car while doing multiple things on their phone. They've clicked on an email they thought was from their boss. It wasn't, and multiple situations like that. So again, that piece around being stressed and distracted, you've got multiple alerts coming in from different platforms. And when you're starting to go through things, you're multitasking. That's a really rough point to kind of start answering emails. And it's difficult, right? Because we're in an age where we're all trying to be productive. And there is a concept of, oh, you know what? Like, again, if you've got families and young children, you're trying to fit so much into your day. So guess what? When you're actually transitioning on the train or wherever, this is a prime opportunity for you to get back to your emails. So it's kind of like a difficult point because we know that we're in a more time poor society. And so we are trying to, multitask and get things in. But if I can encourage, listeners, try and time block. So you are kind of allocating. I mean, I was actually recently told to block out time to firefight. So again, you give yourself maybe an hour of the day, all those big tasks you put in that hour.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, the afternoon, you can put some smaller blocks in, but actually you are single tasking. You are focusing on one task and your brain can function at its best in that instance. So again, there's great examples of that. And also just to emphasize how we do need to move away from just trying to do everything at once, because that is when we're going to be making mistakes.
It is really difficult, isn't it? Because I'm definitely someone that struggles with distraction. So before we started this call, I had to shut down my Teams. I've turned my phone over so the phone screen is down.
Yeah.
And I've only just done that because that's lit up a couple of times. And I'm like, who's messaging me? Who's messaging me? So that's down. Teams is out of the way and closed. Notifications are off. Do not disturb is on. Because this is like a time block that I need to focus on. And it's the same with, different tasks we do. And if we're not giving something our full attention, then we can't be fully aware of what's happening, can we? Because we're only giving a tiny slice of our mind to it. So time blocking. The other thing where that comes in as well is I'm quite a creative person. What we do with the podcast and everything, there's a certain amount of creativity that comes with that. And I remember Austin Kleon, who's an author and artist, he basically, one of his favorite pastimes is ironing because it gives him time, because it requires no thought. It just gives him time to reset his mind and reset his brain. And that's his moment of calm, essentially. That's
and it's so true. I did an experiment recently because I'm like a guinea pig. I'm really trying to live and do all of this all the time. So I actually, I gave myself, because on the app in the Zensory, there's actually touch pads for people that are kinesthetic, which means you like to learn through touch or process information through touch. So if you like doodling, some of us love doodling and writing things down. That can help you process information massively. So in between meetings, I had like a pad of paper and some paints. And it didn't matter what it looked like. I was literally just kind of like doing kind of paint by numbers stuff. And I was doing meetings, finish a meeting, and I would just paint. And I was processing everything. I was getting ideas. I was creative. It was clear. And then I think it was a week later, I decided to kind of do something else. And I would just read something in between my breaks. Opposite impact, because one was mindless and I didn't have to think of anything. It was just processing time. It was gaps. It was clear space, similar to a walk or similar to just breathing or similar to, anything that's mindless. But then actually reading a book or reading more information in my breaks, which many of us do, we look at emails, we check things. I wasn't able to process anything. And, I live and breathe this, I work on this, I know all of this stuff. But just seeing that for myself recently, it was another reminder, like, wow, you start to see when you put this into practice, like for the listeners out there, kind of like, definitely I recommend try it. Maybe tomorrow, if you have a break, do something like mindless, go for a walk, paint, do something that's kind of just relaxing, and don't add any more information. Like, try and just, let it go. Gardening, even as the weather's getting nicer, those kind of things. And just see how your brain reacts, because then when you see it, it becomes more real, and it becomes, a habit then.
How do you feel about, and this it's slightly off tangent, but the whole working from home thing? So it's hard to go gardening or to paint if you're sat in an office on the 8th floor of a tower block, and lots of people are coming and you're getting interruptions. Some people work better in their own space where they're comfortable and they've got full control over those. Do you think that's like, does this kind of brings that forward, doesn't it, in some ways?
Yes. So I was going to say, on that point, obviously people, can't do gardening, painting, those examples, I think, because I'm working from home a lot at the moment. And yeah, of course. But that's where the platform comes in. Like with the Zensory, the whole idea is you've got a toolkit in your pocket. So on your phone, on your computer, you have it all there. And you can kind of just, because again, we're at our desk, so the culture's not there yet. So the whole idea was it's subtle. Like I wanted to have,
I love that.
People can go on their phone and it's in your pocket. So you almost have like a retreat in your pocket, and you can reset anywhere. Go to the toilet, use it on your phone. You can use it on your computer even while you're in a meeting. Sometimes I use the touchpads in a meeting just to process, because I'm overstimulated. So that's the piece in terms of accessibility. That's why I think tech is amazing, and we can use tech for good, because the accessibility is huge. But the second piece you mentioned is, working from home. This is why for people that are neurodivergent, like I'm neurodivergent, I have ADHD. And for me, I can do things that most people would find really difficult, like running a company at a young age and doing a million different things and speaking in front of huge audiences and building a product. That would be hard for some people, but for an ADHD brain, you can just do it because you thrive in high stress environments. However, if you are that way of thinking, autistic, dyspraxic, ADHD, dyslexic, working from home is so beneficial for you. And again, in cybersecurity and tech, we have a very high number of people that are neurodivergent, around 20%. But it's, again, those are only those that are diagnosed. And we know that the diagnostic process is difficult and inaccessible. So again, further emphasis on working from home is so inclusive. If you can give people those 3 days out of 5, or just let people be able to choose, because they can then regulate in the way that they feel comfortable.
Yeah, it hadn't, when I posed that question to you, it hadn't dawned on me about how subtle the use of the app is. Like you said, you could go to the toilet and use the app. You don't need to, because everybody everywhere is stood looking at their phone. Do you know what I mean? Or with earbuds in. So if you were literally stood there looking at your phone with some binaural sounds playing in your ears, that wouldn't look out of the ordinary. If you were sat in a canteen, with some touchpads, that wouldn't look out of the ordinary. So actually, the beauty of this is that it doesn't require some watercolors or some paint pens, and it doesn't require someone, what are you doing there? Because actually what you're doing looks perfectly normal to everyone else. So if you don't want to own that and you want to be subtle, it's got the opportunity. It's funny what you say about neurodiversity as well, because 20% diagnosed, but I think I mentioned before, my son's autistic. He's 11. And since his diagnosis, we look, and my wife's probably autistic and I'm probably ADHD, but I'm not diagnosed. And, I don't broadcast, I have just broadcast that fact, but I don't broadcast that fact because I haven't got a diagnosis, and I don't want to, now there's like, everyone's got ADHD, but that's not the case, is it? It's more, I tick a lot of those boxes as well. My wife says, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to put yourself out there? Because people might be horrible. And it's like, yeah, but if they are, they are. That's their own business for them, So it's these toolings and these kind of not coping mechanisms, but these.
No, they are. They
are, yeah. Yeah. The things you're equiping individuals like me with this app do help us in a world that isn't necessarily friendly to us. This isn't, the world isn't the neurotypical world isn't necessarily comfortable for neurodiverse people. So this app helps us navigate that alien world that isn't very comfortable for us. So that's good.
And a funny story is I actually was diagnosed with ADHD through building the app and having tons of ADHDers email me and be like, this is the only thing that's ever worked. And it was so funny because I remember thinking years ago, I was like, there's nothing that works for, someone that wants to do 3 minutes. I couldn't sit down and meditate. I was like, wasn't there yet.
No,
so I was like, I needed 30 seconds and I needed touch and I needed sound and I needed breathing. I needed a whole mix of toolkit because I'd kind of be like, oh, I need to be stimulated in different ways. And then I didn't realize that would apply. And all the research said that that was a great thing to do, but no one had done it. And again, I started building emails from people that were like, this is better than any therapy I've had as an ADHDer. And it was really crazy. And I was like, why are all these people that have got ADHD saying this is so helpful? And then it turns out I was like, oh shit, yeah, that's me. And then I kind of got diagnosed through that reverse method of building something for that whole community. So that was a really funny full circle moment, to be honest.
That's amazing. My mum always said it. I'd completely forgotten this because it wasn't unusual for me, but my mum said to me a couple of weeks ago that when I was a kid and I had homework, she knew I was doing my homework because the music was always on really loud. And I used to literally do my homework sat in my bedroom with music blaring. And I used to be into a lot of like 90s rap back then, so it would have been really loud and heavy and bassy and lots of words. But that's how I used to sit down and do my homework. Which, other people like that would be such a massive distraction. But even now, I love music in the background constantly. My wife doesn't. She prefers maybe I'm scared to be alone with my thoughts. I don't know.
So no, actually, funny you say that because I also love working with music and with background sound. And if you do have, like a brain that needs that stimulation, silence isn't stimulating enough for you. So you need to add a bit more stimulation. You need a bit of background sound, white noise, the sound of birds, a coffee shop, anything like that gives you just that right amount so you can focus. Whereas some people just want silence. Some people want, music. And also another interesting thing, when you look at experiments of different types of music, there isn't like you said, there's not a one size fits all. Different genres obviously are going to help you get into a certain state. But one interesting thing is music, the ideal music to listen to while you work, if you like music while you work, is music with no highs, lows, lyrics or breaks. So if you can have a 25-minute or 50-minute soundtrack, which the Zensory actually also has, so you can access it. And there's loads of stuff for free on it anyway. Again, accessibility, wanting to make it accessible to people. But the music was curated to get people into a flow state. So it's that state you get into when you're in your creative flow state and you don't even know that time or space exists. You're in your flow. And every time a song changes, it takes you out of that state. So actually, if you're listening to a focused playlist and every 3 minutes the song's changing, your brain gets a completely new stimulus. Same with lyrics. So that is the optimal music to listen to. And if you add binaural beats and naturescapes, which we've also done, it adds a further layer of literally shifting your brain frequency and your brain state. So these are all kind of exciting things coming out of the world of neuroscience, of music, of biohacking. And that's all the stuff we've really, taken into the tool. Because like you said, music's so subtle. And I've written music since I was young. So it's a big passion of mine, as we discussed before. But using it to shift your state is really powerful and it's subtle as well.
That's almost like the Pomodoro flow state, isn't it? Almost like rather than a Pomodoro timer, have this piece of focus soundtrack. And when that ends, that's when your focus time ends. That's clever. I like that. If you had a room full of CISOs, decision makers, budget holders, what would you want them to know about how stress impacts behaviors? I'm on a webinar in a couple of weeks and it's about the worries that keep CISOs awake at night. And there's a CISO there and I would typically in my roles, I would feed into the CISO and he'd feed to the board. But if you needed to speak to a room full of CISOs, what would you want them to know about how stress impacts the behavior of their colleagues, employees?
I think the first thing is understanding the amygdala hijack that we spoke about before. When you're stressed, you can't think straight because, again, that fight or flight mode. Initially, if people in a room can understand that, I think that's a huge leap. I've taught entire rooms of people about that and shown them the visual. And I just watch like a light bulbs go up in the room because I think up until this point where we've been able to understand that, it's been a woo-woo like, oh yeah, sure, feeling more calm is going to make you feel more safe. No. This is this is backed now by, neuroscience is backed by looking at the state of the brain and performance and focus. So I think initially, like teaching CISOs, when we're stressed, we can't think straight. And I also think we have to provide the tools and the education and the campaigns to shift culture.
Yeah.
You mentioned something before, which is really important. It's not a one size fits all. So we have to lead with culture. And that's what we've realized as well, which is what you've seen. We've got these kind of culture packages where you can start to say as leaders, here's what you can do. Here's videos, infographics, posters, webinars, because as leaders, it's not enough to just say, here's a tool, guys, like go and crack on. No, you have to lead by example. So modeling as a leader and being like, guys, before, we're going to have 45-minute meetings, not an hour, because I want you to be able to kind of process. I want you to be able to just decompress. I want you to be able to get into the right state beforehand. And I always also like to teach people about the 3 Ps. So that's prime, perform, and process. Again, so it's prime the brain before you do a meeting or a task, perform during, and then process information after, because we're missing out. We're really missing out on that. So again, just this whole campaign piece, culture shift is what we need. And we need CISOs to be thinking bigger. We've got to be thinking bigger. And we've done kind of case studies with global banks to show that when you get HR teams and cybersecurity teams together with the campaigns we've done, the phishing click rates, the performance, the well-being goes through the roof. So I can share, again, details of that after in maybe some show notes. But I think that if we can emphasize the stress and safety correlation, and we can start to shift culture and have leaders model the change they want to see, I think we're going to then start to see big changes.
And I think that's so important. You've got to have leaders almost steer the ship and navigate everyone, come on everyone this way, that's essentially, you want to have faith in them and them leading the ship, because they've got the loudest voices. People hear them more than anyone else in a business, don't they? So if you get them on board and bought in, that's crucial. Absolutely crucial.
Yeah. I was going to say, Jatinder, as a guy, he's a CISO for Deloitte, and he is amazing. He speaks a lot about this and has kind of got some great techniques. So you can find him. His surname slipped my brain, but Jatinder, Deloitte CISO, great examples of how, you can be a CISO and do best practice, and amazing, been really open and transparent about his mental health. And he's seen such unity and connection happen in his team. We've spoken a lot with him over the past few years of like how you can model that behavior and create a really supportive culture in cybersecurity and in the team that is just transformative. So he's a great person to follow.
I think that's amazing. One thing that tools like this and this tool can really help with is change that perception of cybersecurity of being this department of no, and these people that are out to get me and they're watching everything I do. And actually, no, we're just trying to keep the business safe. And to do that, we need to keep you safe, and fundamentally, I don't get me wrong, there are I know organizations that are like, if you fail 3 phishing simulations, then, you're getting called in and it affects your performance. And I disagree with that completely. It's not constructive. I wouldn't want to work there in any capacity. But what we are seeing is that organizations and the culture is so important, and it's steering that ship in the right direction to change those perceptions from the department of no to the department of no problem. Of course, helping people fully understand. Yeah, that's the whole reason the awareness angle podcast exists, right? Because it's about taking those news stories and making them relatable, taking tools like this and helping awareness professionals understand that there are things out there that can help them, and to help people understand that security is their problem too. So, and everyone just needs to feel safer, which we can do with tools like this, which is brilliant. It is kind of many people probably hadn't, and you might find this when talking to potential customers of the Zensory. This isn't, like, in my mind, this isn't something everyone would consider. People wouldn't go, oh, I need to get something to fix that problem. And it's like, a lot of people don't realize this is a problem until you've explained it's a problem. Do you get that at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it has been so challenging over the past few years. Like, we know how important this is. We've got data that it works. We've got data how important it is. But again, it's like, we are carving out a whole new movement in the industry. Like
Yeah.
it's a whole new movement. It's a new way of looking at things. And things are slowly catching on. No one was really talking about this a few years ago. And we've been on, so many different stages. Like really, we've created well-being spaces at so many massive national and international cybersecurity events. Well-being space. We built a forest at International Cyber Expo, I think it was last year, and that won an award because you had these people that were sat there, and we had trees, and we had the sound of birds and the smell of pine, and it was creative. But again, Jade, my co-founder, actually kind of like led that. And it was amazing just watching the response of people going, oh my gosh, this is something new. And it's like, how can we take creativity and put people first and just make people feel better really at the core of how we're doing things? Because I just don't think any of us want to see, the attrition rates and the level of burnout and the level of stress that we're seeing. If we carry on as we are, we're going to see that just keep going up. We're going to see people, still so disconnected. People not wanting to come into the office, not knowing their teams, and so things need to change. And I think that's what we're trying to really spearhead and disrupt. But for sure, I think it's a challenge getting people even thinking this forward ahead.
If I turned around today and said, right, I want to engage with the Zensory and get you on board. I want to buy your product and roll it out into my business. What would the beginning of that journey? I gather it's different for everyone, but can you give me an example of what that might look like, or what a deployment of the tool, to use traditional terms, would look like, for example?
Yeah, of course. So you'd get an entire kind of culture package. And initially, one thing we found really works is kicking off with education. So we'd either do an in-person or online webinar to educate the team around how to recognize when they're stressed, what happens in the brain, the body, teaching them some core tools, and then teaching them as well how, attackers might see that as a vulnerability, really linking the two together, because we've seen people just get it. As soon as it's kind of like it's explained, the education's there, they get it. Once we've kind of done that, what we'll next do is give, posters, infographics, videos, and obviously access to the Zensory. And a whole load of different pieces that you can roll out, email campaigns using all the wording and the messaging. So again, if you're wanting to roll out a campaign, you don't even need to think. You're like, exactly for each team, you've kind of got your email campaign already written. So you can kind of launch things. So that's almost like that option of just launching the campaign together. And then obviously everyone has access to the mobile app and the web app unlimited, so they can be using that. And as part of the collateral, we teach people how they can use it. You can use it in between meetings. You can kind of use it before a task, after, or when you're feeling stressed. And that's basically it in a nutshell. But sometimes at the beginning, we want to be understanding the culture of the business, because every business is unique. So you want to understand what's the engagement like, where are their gaps, where are their challenges, and tailoring things for the messaging and for the demographic of the organization as well.
Do you measure engagement on an individual level? So you can see
we measure
which users are most engaged, which users aren't.
Yeah, exactly. You can see all of that. You can see who's engaged, who's not. You can also see anonymously who's feeling more focused, more relaxed. You can see, obviously, phishing click rates decreasing. And also we've done surveys in the past. We'll do check-ins maybe every 3 to 6 months and send a survey out and say, like, how are you finding it? What are you feeling? And that's always quite nice, because you can get some human stories of, we gave, when we rolled this out with one of the clients, it was a global bank that we worked with, we had people coming back and in the survey saying, I've been using this not only at work, but I've been using it with my children to go to bed. Wow. Or it's been helping me sleep, or it's been, so it was actually providing not just the security piece of people being more conscious because they were educated and given the tools, but they were taking it home and they're giving it to their kids, and it became part of their life.
Yeah.
So that's where it was kind of nice to see, and they felt valued. I think it was like 96% felt more valued out of 6,000 people. So people felt more valued, and suddenly it's like, oh, we're not just going to tell you off, we care about you. And, so that's really important.
That must make you feel like you've really achieved, like in creating this tool, like the difference you've made has been phenomenal, clearly. Like that must feel good.
Well, there's always more. I think we're always like pushing. We're like, there's always more we can do. But you're right. I think hearing people's like anecdotes and stories is really beautiful to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This really, unfortunately, we're in a world where, like, I would love to see a company that says, I'm not going to do annual training anymore. The money I spend on my annual training, I'm going to spend on the Zensory because this gets to the root cause of the problem. And like, training isn't, I hate annual training, quarterly training, whatever way you shape it. It's a compliance exercise. It's not a behavioral change exercise. Like, if you want to be compliant, you do training. If you want to, and I would love it to say, right, as a company, we're going to do this because this is actually going to change behaviors, and we'll measure how many people engage, and we'll use that as our training metric. We're training them. This isn't traditional security training about don't click, how to report a phish, how much is a breach worth. You know, this is training them right at the root cause of the problem. And I would love, I mean, I don't know any companies that have made that jump and have decided to make that switch. And I think I can see that happening as this space moves and evolves and progresses. If someone was bold and brave, say, right, no more annual training, we're giving everyone the Sensory. I think that would be a beautiful place.
That'd be a nice, great world to see. I think it needs to be as well supplemented. I think we need both. But you're right. I think people are bored. They're bored of the old way of doing things. People aren't like, oh, great, I've got my annual training or my kind of like biannual training. It's not like that.
No.
But if it was kind of like, oh, I'm actually going to feel more focused and I'm going to be able to perform and I'm going to learn all these cool techniques and using humor as well. Like a lot of the time, like in our messaging, it's really tongue in cheek and it's funny and it's real. And it's because that's what we're kind of like. We don't take ourselves that seriously. And that is just who we are. And, you know, if you can do that, again, it comes down to making things more human.
Making them relatable as well. Yeah,
exactly. And just make it human, witty, fun, but then having, like you said, the root cause, the brain, the nervous system, the triggers of us being like, oh gosh, I need to click on that. It's you're right, the education of, is it triggering you? Is it making you feel in any way, like you said, that gasp or things like that? And then it's actually training them, but internally training them.
Right. Remind me of these three tools the three takeaways that you said earlier on. There was the sharp intake of breath and the slow release of breath, and do that 3 times. That was one of them, wasn't it?
Yep, that was one. So if you can take 3 deep breaths with a longer exhale, so 3 nice sighs, you know, just maybe in for 4 seconds, out for 6 seconds.
Excellent.
If you do that 3 times, that is perfect. We also spoke about another technique, which is a fingerprint technique, which is kind of...
If anyone's watching the video, you can see me like doing big OK signs. And I can feel my fingerprints on my fingers, which is really strange. But yeah, it's that feels really grounding. It's like straight away my brain's taken right to my extremity there on the fingers. And like, that's what I'm thinking about now, which probably isn't good when I'm in conversation with you, but I get it. Was there another one? Was that the...
We mentioned a few. We mentioned time blocking. We also mentioned soundscapes, binaural beats, music with no highs, lows, lyrics, or breaks.
And all of those are obviously available within the Zensory app.
Yeah,
shameless plug.
Indeed. And we also spoke about as well, another key takeaway, we have to shift culture. We can't just give out the tools. We've got to be thinking about education, culture, and, you know, giving people these reminders, constant reminders, which is where things like the posters, the screensavers, the education comes in.
Yeah.
And again, I love the idea if we had leaders at the beginning of every meeting being like, I know this is kind of like out there, but imagine it's like, okay, guys, before we start, let's take 3 deep breaths and then we'll crack on and start. And it's funny, like that makes a massive difference because everyone's rushed from different things. So
I absolutely think that's phenomenal. When you said earlier about the 3 Ps, and the prepare was the first one, wasn't it? And I think how often...
prime, perform.
Prime.
Perform, process.
I'm going to make a note of that. I think prime, so often you'll be on a meeting or you'll land in a meeting and you've come straight off another meeting and you haven't finished processing the previous meeting. And I know now it's quite common for people to set 25-minute meetings, so they've got 5 minutes to go between. But if you need the loo and you need to get a cup of tea or coffee, that 5 minutes has gone completely. So I think we should probably normalize people going, can I just have 2 minutes? Or the first 2 minutes, just be like, can we just wait for 2 minutes? And then you can prime for the meeting or finish processing the previous meeting and then prime for this meeting, because otherwise the first 5-10 minutes of a meeting ends up being, you know, just a frazzled mess. And as you slowly kind of settle back down into it. And if anyone's listening to this, think of the meetings you've been on. And I bet there's been meetings where the first 10 minutes have been manic and kind of all over the place, and you've kind of just settled into it after 10 minutes. And that's probably what happens when you don't prime for a meeting or finish processing the previous one, which is that's game changing for me.
And if you want, we can do at the end of the podcast for everyone listening, we can do just a quick minute process where I can guide people through just grounding and breathing.
Oh, spoiler alert, you should have just dropped that right at the end, but we're nearly at the end now. So yeah, we'll do that. That's good.
Keep them listening for another few minutes.
Where can we find out more about the Zensory?
On our website, which is www.zensory.com, and everything's on there.
Excellent. And can you let's have a think. Can you recommend a book? It doesn't have to be related to this. Is there a good book that you think everyone should read? I'm completely dropping Jasmine on the spot here. This wasn't a prepared question, so I'm completely dropping you on the spot.
That's a good question.
It doesn't have to be on this topic. It could be Harry Potter
or mindfulness related.
No, it could be Harry Potter or, Where the Crawdads Sing. It could be
the Akatar books. A Court of Thorns and Roses is a great fantasy series. It's been taking off recently. It's brilliant.
I've never read that. I've seen it mentioned loads, but I've never actually read it.
Brilliant. Absolutely, like page turner. If you want a good book to get stuck into, there's 5 books, and it will keep you really intrigued and fascinated for a long period of time. So it's great series.
There's a book I read. I'll give you a book as well, and it's not a very long book, but it's the fastest I've ever read a book, and this was a couple of years ago, and it's called Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean, and it's quite a. I only thought of this because I was watching a TV program last night. And I was like, I wonder if I thought it would make a great mini-series or something, but no one seems to support the rights to it, which is a shame. But Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean, it's not a happy read, but it's a gripping read. I mean, it's quite a harrowing read, but it's good.
Same as these, they're very action-packed. It's like watching a thriller or an action film, or like Lord of the Rings or something. It's very much like that, but it's great. Excellent. It gets you into a whole other world. So it's fun.
Excellent. It's funny about attention spans, but my wife had never seen Lord of the Rings, and the minute I probed it, I said 3-hour movie. She was like, no. But there's actually, you can watch the Lord of the Rings. The times are all on, someone did it on Reddit, and you can watch it in 12 parts, like the extended edition. So 12 hours of Lord of the Rings, and they fall nicely into about 50 an hour and 10 minute slices. And we watched it with that, and it felt so natural, like a mini series. It was brilliant. So we did it over 12 nights. And it was the only way you should have watched it, but it was amazing.
I'll do that as well.
It was really good.
Technique.
Yeah. Right, Jasmine, thank you so much for coming on board. And it's been great chatting to you. Everyone, go and check out thezensory.com and have a look at the app. The app's available on the App Store as well, and it's on the Play Store as well. App Store, Play Store. Yep, and the web. It's a web app as well, isn't it? So you can access it.
And there's a new version coming out in the next few months, which is going to be super exciting, tailored just for cybersecurity. So it's really going to be, very, very cool. So stay tuned because that's coming out soon.
Awesome. Let me know when that comes, and I can talk about it some more. So that's we'll give that a push more. Right, we're going to do a minute of process. Is that
nice?
Okay,
so for everyone listening, whether you're stood or sat down, just get really comfortable in wherever you're sat. And if you can, if you're not in public, close down your eyes. If not, you can stay as you are. And I want you to start by just taking a big breath into your belly for 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale through your mouth for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And keeping your eyes closed, or however you are, just rolling your shoulders back 3 times. Just releasing any tension in your shoulders. Rolling your shoulders forward 3 times. And then just rolling your neck from left to right, releasing any tension in the back of your neck. And then I want you to just take a moment just to ground yourself, just connect to the sensations of maybe the chair you're sat on, your feet on the floor. And I want you to think of any sounds that you can hear aside from my voice. And just connect to your senses, that the touch, the sound, the scent, taste. Just be aware of anything that you can kind of feel in your body to bring you back to the present moment. And then going back to that fingerprint technique, I want you to just take your fingers in that circular motion, your index finger and your thumb, and just making that circular motion, just feeling for the ridges in your fingerprints. And as you're doing this, just taking those nice, gentle, deep breaths. And then when you're ready, I want you to take a big, deep breath in through your belly, biggest breath you've taken all day. And then a nice big exhale through the mouth, just letting go of anything else. And then we're back.
I wasn't expecting that today. That's amazing. That's not why I got you on the call, but that's brilliant. That's lovely. Thank you. Wow.
Pleasure.
Right. If anyone's listening, let me know what you thought. Let me know your take on everything Jasmine has discussed and the sensory and how it makes you feel. And if you did that at the end, let us know how that made you feel. That'd be amazing. Look, it's been wonderful talking to you today. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. I loved it.
Yeah, great. If get yourself to www.thezensory.com, get the app, have a look at it, and let us know what you think. Jasmine, thanks so much for your time, and we'll speak again soon.
Pleasure.